Morning, all. All right, so 1921-22. We're going to take a look at that season now. This is a Met Sundin jersey, and no, Sundin didn't play for the 1922 Toronto St. Pats. I just figured use this one. I think this is the most accurate to what the St. Patrick's jerseys look like of the three St. Pats that I have, but at any rate, the fact that I have three St. Pats kind of threw me a bit this morning. Ottawa ended up being first overall in the NHL that year, but while they were the best team during the regular season, the playoff setup had changed. So before this season, the first half and second half winners would play against each other if necessary, and if the same team won the first half and the second half, they moved right into the Stanley Cup final. That changed this year. Now the top two out of the four teams make the playoffs, play against each other in a two-game total goal affair, and then the winner of that two-game total goal affair moves on to play against the winner of the WCHL PCHA playoff out west. So there is a new league to talk about. But Ottawa does finish first that season at 14-8-2, so it's still a 24-game schedule. Toronto, 13-10-1 record for the St. Patrick's. Again, I don't have a St. Patrick's magnet, so I'm using the green Maple Leafs magnet. Montreal 12-11-1 and Hamilton 7-17. So Montreal just barely misses the playoffs, and Hamilton still struggling in terms of finding victories in the National Hockey League. The Western Canada Hockey League is formed in 1921. It would run until 1926, so it went through 5 seasons. And when it came into existence, the PCHA and WCHL sit down and decide to have a playoff where the winner will play in the Stanley Cup final against the winner of the NHL's playoffs. There is some news here from the NHL that year, too. It is a 16-game goal-scoring streak by Punch Broadbent. That is a goal-scoring streak that stands to this day. I don't think anybody ever beats that. I don't think we'll ever see somebody have a 17-game goal-scoring streak. I just don't see it. December 14th of 1921, Montreal signs King Clancy. And it's the same one they named the trophy after. Harry Cameron sets an NHL record that season with 17 assists. And it really, honestly, it's not a record that lasts that long, but hey, it's there. Harry Cameron bounced around a little bit in the NHL early on, too. It feels like there's almost every season he's traded for cash, or he's bought off, and he's moved here, and he sets a record with 17 assists. January 14th of 1922. It's another record we're never going to see equaled. Sprague and Odie Cleghorn are brothers, and for the Montreal Canadiens, they get 4 goals each in a 10-4 win against the hapless Hamilton Tigers. So there are a number of NHL records that were set against those hapless NHL Hamilton Tigers. And then February 11th of 1922, we see the first tie in the National Hockey League. And when you see how it's reached, you understand why it's the first. You had to play the full 20 minutes of overtime to get there. Toronto and Ottawa finished tied 4-4. Of course, we would have another tie that season, but that was the first one, meaning the other one was between Ottawa and Montreal. And then March 25th of 1922, the 6-0 win by Toronto right here against the Vancouver Millionaires. That is the final professional hockey game played with a rover, played with 7 guys on the ice for each team. The rover really wasn't necessary at this point. There's a lot of really talented players. Can you imagine having 6 guys on each team on the ice in an NHL rink? The rinks are the same size, 200 by 85 feet. So, yeah, I can't imagine. That'd be hard to watch, to be honest. Adding one player for each team on the ice would be difficult, and especially since that player's technically positionless, can go wherever. Now there was also no substitution allowed for minor penalties starting that season. Up until then, if you got penalized and it was a minor, then somebody else got on the ice for you. But they also dropped the amount of time for a minor. I think it had been 3 minutes. They dropped it to 2. And major penalties dropped to 5 minutes. So we get into the kind of penalties we have now in the National Hockey League. Sprague Cleghorn, again, is awarded by Frank Calder, who is the president of the NHL. He really wanted Cleghorn to go to Hamilton. And Sprague's like, no, I will not. But when Hamilton asked him where he'd be willing to play, Sprague says, I wouldn't mind playing for Montreal. He had been playing in Ottawa. So he ends up going to Montreal, where, again, as I said, him and Odie Cleghorn get 4 goals in the same game. So, yeah, he liked playing with his brother, I guess. St. Patrick's goaltender Jake Forbes refused to play after being denied a raise. And then the worst part is, he then watched Toronto win a Stanley Cup without him. So, yeah, and it's one of the first holdouts in National Hockey League history, and it backfires majorly. February 1st of 1922, Sprague Cleghorn, who had the 4 goals here and refused to be traded, he's in the news again because he injures 3 players in the same game. 3. Eddie Girard, Cy Denny, and Frank Nybor. Now, I know Denny and Nybor are in the Hockey Hall of Fame. I don't know if Girard is, but police actually wanted to arrest him after the game. But you'll be glad to know the NHL fined him $30. He did get a match penalty eventually, and then the NHL fined him $30. I would guess that was the maximum allowable under the collective bargaining agreement. That's my guess. So, yeah, he injured 3 guys in the same game, and all 3 players missed games after that, and he got a $30 fine. So we'll just go ahead, and with the game that was played last night between Florida and Edmonton, everybody complaining and talking about all the officiating and who should or shouldn't be suspended. February 1st, 1922. So over a century ago, and I'm sure that argument was being had by fans of Ottawa since 3 players are injured. And keep in mind, there's like 12 guys on a team, like a quarter of their team, and 3 of their top players hurt. And yeah, I can imagine they weren't very happy about it. Now, Punch Broadbent ends up leading the league in scoring. He avoids being hurt by Sprague and plays all 24 games, scores 31 goals, 14 assists, 45 points. And as I previously mentioned, had the 16-game goal-scoring streak. So very talented player. Cy Denny, 22 games. He missed the 2 because he got hit by Sprague there. 28 goals, 12 assists, 40 points. So very good numbers again from Cy. Babe Dye for Toronto in 24 games had 31 goals, 7 assists, 38 points. Harry Cameron, 24 games, 18 goals, 17 assists, 35 points. And as I said, the 17 assists, an NHL record at the time. Joe Malone for Hamilton is kind of on his own, alone in Hamilton. 24 games, 24 goals, 7 assists, 31 points. And I just mean that, like, Malone was a very good player on a team that was really quite not good. Corb Denny, 24 games, 19 goals, 9 assists, 28 points. So he avoided being injured by Sprague Cleghorn. Reg Noble played all 24 games, 17 goals, 11 assists, 28 points. And there's Sprague Cleghorn from Montreal. Didn't miss a game that year. 24 games, 17 goals, 9 assists, 26 points. So it's just interesting how things, you look back through the history and you go, hey, that feels familiar. And then goaltending, Clint Benedict's the guy again. 14-8-2 record, plays every game, 3.34 goals against. Georges Vezina for Montreal, 12-11-1 with a 3.84 goals against. Remember how I said the Jake Forbes holdout that he wanted to raise backfired? Yeah, it allowed Toronto to bring in John Ross Roach, and as a rookie, he was pretty good. 11-10-1 with a 4.07 goals against. Hamilton's Howard Lockhart did his best. 6-17 record with a 4.39 goals against average. And then we get into the playoff part of things. Toronto wins the first game 5-4, and apparently iced the puck a lot. A lot during that game. And then it was scoreless in the second game in Ottawa. So I'm sure it was scintillating action there, a scoreless draw. And because it's total goals, Toronto moves on to the Stanley Cup final. So I'm sure that's how we decided things now, a 2-game total goal series. Nobody'd complain about that. Anyways, then we get into the Cup final. It's the Vancouver Millionaires who make the final again. Vancouver Millionaires could have been a dynasty just in the Stanley Cup final. They just can't quite get over the hump. 4-3 win for Vancouver in the first game in Toronto, so that had to feel pretty good. It's a best of 5. Then Toronto wins the second game 2-1 in overtime on a goal by Babe Dye, and we will talk about him in a moment. Vancouver wins the third game 3-0, so they're right on the verge of potentially winning a Stanley Cup. And then Toronto wins games 4 and 5. 6-0 in game 4 and 5-1 in game 5. See, all the Maple Leafs need is to meet Vancouver in a Stanley Cup final, right? It's probably not going to happen. If it did, though, man, just imagine the interest in that Stanley Cup final. But Babe Dye was huge in that final. He had 9 of the 16 goals that Toronto scored in the final. He had the overtime winners I mentioned in game 2, and he had 4 of the 5 goals in game 5. He just basically put the team on his back and said, all right, we're winning the Stanley Cup tonight. I'll get it. You guys just watch me. I'm going to go out and work my magic. John Ross Roach was also the first rookie goaltender to have a shutout in the Stanley Cup final. So as I said, Toronto's goalie's like, I'm not playing if I don't get a raise. And they're like, okay. And so they signed another goalie and they won the Stanley Cup. Whoops. But Ottawa will be back. We'll talk about them in tomorrow's video. But there you go. You guys are all caught up on how things went in the 1921-22 NHL season. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. As always, don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you've not done so already. Thank you guys so much for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.